Now we're making it through. Check, check. 1, 2. Howdy out there. Welcome back. It's been a couple. Happy New Year. We got that 2020 behind us and we're ready for some 2021 magic. Hope you're all doing well. Had a good New Year, good holidays, and that you're safe and staying healthy. Thanks for joining me tonight. Last time we left off, we were sketching up this concept for sort of a outer rim herder or trapper, maybe something geared more towards wild animals, wild creatures, maybe treasure hunter, but somebody on a sort of desolate remote space. And we were kind of having fun. And I kind of started out with some sketches, maybe you remember. We sort of started over here and we were looking at some ideas, some designs, looking at some helmet shapes, something a little more vintage, something a little more aerodynamic. I think we ended up talking a little bit about the helmet having a little bit of the tail on it, but more like, say, Roman soldier sort of shape to the back, like tighter fitting, a little more aerodynamic. Just playing around with ideas, and then we were sort of looking at this, and then we kind of moved into this one, and we were talking as part of this process that many times we'll start with the front view to just get a sense of the sort of symmetry of things and overall shapes, shape language, before we decide to put them into three-quarter view with a little bit of perspective. So last time we sort of worked up this loosely and then sort of decided to move it over into something three-quarter view to answer some of these dimensional questions, which, concept sketching, just idea sketching, doesn't answer all of those details for you, but it gives you some sense of what we're talking about for further development. And then after we sort of worked up the three-quarter one, then we moved into sort of doing the rest of the body that might go with this. So you end up kind of starting here, adding this, and then as you're doing this, you're thinking more about the body. So I don't know, we just sort of, it was on the fly, we sort of came up with this idea and just knocked it out. But I would have to say that as a design goes, it could use further refinement. I don't feel like I've necessarily answered all those details, so I might do a little more design sketching tonight just to resolve it maybe a little bit more, but I think really what I'd like to end up with is maybe a piece where it's a little bit of sort of a head and shoulders, more formalized drawn portrait here, where I'm having a chance to draw it knowing a little bit more about what's there and then being able to lay down something that looks a little more finalized and maybe kind of like a pinup, but I don't know if I'm going to do full body or not. I don't know if we're going to have time for full body this time. Maybe I'll make that another breakout session. So this might just be about sort of formalizing what we have here in the torso and then maybe doing a full body on the next one. So just kind of continuing on from where we were last time. But yeah, so I'll be keeping these sketches nearby, keeping them taped up here, and sort of looking over my sketches and notes as I work to see if I can answer any more detailed questions that I really haven't answered yet. So, what else? I guess that's about it. So, eventually I'm going to go down on some slightly nicer paper. This is, it's not that nice, but it's just a little thicker stock. It's just some drawing paper. This is actually some Canson artist drawing paper, and suddenly I'm totally drawing a blank on the name of it. They discontinued my old stuff. This used to be the better quality drawing paper, and they've changed it now, which I'm a little bit disappointed. The old version of the paper had just a slight bit more tooth to it. Here, let me see if I can find it. I had this out on my board for waiting to do this, but I put my pad away. Here we go. So this was the older version of it here, which is called the 1557 drawing paper. And if you're getting this in Europe versus the States, it's called a little bit different. Like they have a different name for it. It's very close, but it uses the same thing. Well, now they've changed this, and they're not. Canson isn't making this anymore, and you'll notice that it's medium texture, which I personally love the medium texture, because it just has more tooth. It's good for working with graphite and things like that. Well, now they've made that smooth, and that's okay, but I'm not as big a fan of the smoother. It took away some of the texture that I was really liking, so I'm kind of bummed about it. Anyway, now they are working on, this is a slightly different version of this paper. I'm trying to see if I have one of these around. No, of course I don't. Of course I don't. Here, what's this one? Oh, here we go. So here is the more, the newer version of it, which I have to say I'm less of a fan of. Again, it's going with fine texture. So, but for just basic drawings, concept drawings, nothing serious, it's fine. It's totally fine. But you know how you get your papers that you love and then they don't sell them anymore. And then you're like, what? You're changing the formula on me. So then that's no fun. You got to find a new product. But I love Canson papers in general, and I do recommend them. Let's check our stream rate here before we get going. Looks like we're getting pretty good. Okay. Well, I hope you're all doing well out there. Thanks for joining me tonight. Maybe you have something that you're working on with me. Maybe you're drawing yourself on a project or working on a painting, or maybe you're working on your taxes, or maybe you're just getting caught up on some work. Feel free to join me. Let's work together for a few. And if you want to chime in on the chats, you're welcome to do that as well. I love to meet people, see who's out there. We're on a holiday weekend, so we're getting the extra day this weekend, so it's kind of nice. And if you're out there, hopefully this night, maybe you have a day off tomorrow, and you're able to relax. So let's go. So while I'm still kind of sketching ideas out, I like a slightly cheaper version of paper. Anything really will work, but I like to use slightly less expensive paper that when I'm just thumbnailing and sketching, because, well, you don't want to waste better quality stuff for a final drawing when you're still sketching things out. So I like, I'll use recycled paper. And right now, if it matters to you at home, what I'm working on 11 by 14. Just like recycled sketch paper. It's just cheap. It's not too heavy stock. But this gives me a chance to kind of work out a few things here. So, I think what I'll do, since it's been a couple since I've done this, since we met last time on this design, I'm going to sort of familiarize myself again, just to kind of get used to the idea of what I had. Generally kind of work in 3/4 view here. And little symmetry. Sort of distinct, one of the distinct features that I really did like that we came up with last time was this idea of this sort of breather filter, maybe over the mouth. But then also with the idea that there is this kind of shielding. Sort of plate following the contours of the head, and in a way, I'm guessing this wasn't the highest quality armor, but maybe designed to sort of protect from the heat or maybe attack from something else that might be out there. And then we had these kind of sort of curved, almost like cheekbones, sort of following the cheekbone there. So welcome if you're just joining. We're sort of revisiting a concept that we'd started last time. If you missed the last stream, usually when I'm done with these, they'll be up on Twitch for a little while, and then I move them over to my YouTube page. So if you do end up going over to the YouTube page, just Trey Gallaher at YouTube, do a search for me, you'll find me. Then you can kind of catch up on where we were. But right now, I'm just sort of familiarizing myself with what we did last time. I sort of had the idea of this breather, maybe with a sort of screening. Probably wouldn't see much of the eyes. I'm guessing that this would be very heavy in shadow here. And then because I was figuring this is a pretty desolate place, see, this is one of the things I'm working out right now. So as I was showing you a second ago, in the sketch we were working with last time, some of this stuff isn't fully resolved. And that's the kind of stuff I want to make a little bit more sense out of. So I'm working off this and resolving some of those issues that maybe aren't super clear. And when you do this in 3/4, you definitely get a chance to answer that. So I like the way that this is maybe curved a little bit more. And maybe it should follow the jawline. I don't know. It takes away the sort of angular nature of it. So I'm not sure if I'm going to keep the angles or not. So then the top piece, and if this is the sort of side of the helmet here, this front piece, curved, that this would be a larger helmet that would then sort of be underneath that, but start to curve and make its way in front of the ear. Let's give ourselves a little bit of a neckline here. Probably coming down about the ear. So I like this kind of curved piece. So this helmet would come back here on the other side, probably. Maybe it would curve out a little bit, but I don't think we would see it very much. Coming by on the other side. I don't think it would stick out that much. I think it would truthfully be probably back there. So I hope you're all doing well. Again, it's been a little while. A lot of changes. Beginning with, we moved, which was a big one for my family and I. We've been at our old place for quite a few years, but we moved, so we're still in San Francisco. Been here a long time, but we moved to a different place here. A little bit more space now. We got the little guy. Okay. I'm going to do a side view too. Oh, one other detail while we're sort of working on this. Little dimension to that. Because of this being worn in a pretty remote, desolate place, was thinking that there would probably be wrappings for layering. So I'm thinking, you know, not exactly, but maybe kind of resembling mummy wrappings. So probably the person would wrap first, and then this armor is sort of a last piece. So again, not head to toe covering of the armor, but definitely head to toe covering of any tissue or flesh that might be visible underneath. So this would come up here. This is going to have a little bit of the shielding in front, and then I think the head would sort of, the helmet would sort of tuck back there. So let's do a little enlarged view here. So you have this shielding piece that is the forehead. And then the side, this piece, which is sort of following the cheek and the cheekbone. Masseter muscle sort of being right underneath here, sort of shielding the edge of the jaw there. Following the cheekbone up to kind of the side of the face, side of the eye. So somewhere in here, this has to kind of merge. And geometrically, this has to kind of manage some sort of curvature there. I'd like this little lip here, little detail of this lip, because that, I'd like the helmet as a piece to kind of come underneath that. So the helmet is tucking underneath this lip. So there's no gap there, which means the curvature sort of like that. And this corner may have to make a change actually to accommodate the curvature of that helmet. Because if the helmet's here and it sort of curves then we're going to have this little tip. So maybe somewhere in here we have to adjust this. Sort of center line of the nose piece. I like this sort of primitive rectilinear kind of eye pieces. Okay. Let's try a little bit of a side view. So we'll say ear hole somewhere in there. Eyes, nose, mouth. And then these cheeks, jaw, coming down here. I think a little bit of those sort of sideburn looking helmet shields. I mean, they're not sideburns, but they kind of look a little bit. They remind me of sideburns. So the cheek portion of this comes out here, edge of the nose. This may need to come forward more, actually, come to think of it. And you figure in here, and then we're probably seeing the top of that mouth breather piece here. And then, of course, we got the edge of the eye. Now, does it come back that far? Maybe not. Looks like it may actually shorten up a little bit. Then we've got this curved piece on the front. This kind of flat plane that is this front sort of piece here. So then the curvature of this thing, side of the head, eyes, actually it looks like so our curved piece needs to come back a little bit farther. Lighten that up just a little bit. A bit of a step. And then we were just saying that this helmet piece would probably tuck underneath here just a little bit, curve to the back. Maybe do something like this. Back by the occipital, curve up. Then it kind of comes in here to protect the ear. Now, do you expose the ear? It seems like a pretty sensitive, dangerous spot. So if you're really designing armor, you'd probably want to cover the ear. So then maybe the helmet comes right in here, behind the jaw, so the jaw can move that piece, and then it curves here. Okay. Not bad. Lighten the edge of this eye. Now remember, his head is probably recessed in there a little bit, so you know the eye is probably sort of sitting back inside this. This is all sort of over the top, which means, you know, his head, ear, jaws here, and probably a little bit, we're probably a little far back. I guess we could be close. This comes forward a little bit. So the ear might be coming through someplace in here. Okay, so now we're talking about this sort of curving piece here. And that's kind of following the hairline a little bit, right? So this is all one solid piece before that. So probably curved. Maybe it could do something, leave a little bit of opening, like vent holes, air holes a little bit. So a little bit of that centurion kind of look actually now. So the neck coming back under there. Mouthpiece, so the mouth is sort of here. So it probably gives us a neck. So one possibility is to fill that in or curve the helmet. I like the idea that maybe the helmet could curve. So they come together a little bit more. That's not bad. So, can we do anything else here? Anything else essential? This is all probably not going to be perfectly flush. Part of it could probably be, but it'd be a little bit curved, so there'd be some degree of angle here. Maybe we take out this line a little bit. Oop. Wrong pencil. We're still kind of negotiating the curvature of this cheek. This is probably curved here a little too. And I think I'm going to back off on this second line. Okay, so here we're sort of talking about this panel it sort of tucks in there. So we sort of have a cheek panel. This is probably bending at one angle and then slightly cutting in there. And the angle of this is probably the same, close to the same angle as this. So there's probably a little bit of some dressings or wrap. All right, so we're getting there. So I hope you guys are doing well out there. Good evening or good morning or good afternoon, whenever you may be watching. Okay, we have a little bit of padding down here, which we were kind of looking at for the costume or for the armor. And I think I was kind of looking at not covering everything, so we were probably talking about a chest plate. And then we were looking at maybe some sort of shoulder pads. Sort of coming more to a point, so maybe more like this. So let's do maybe a side view of our armor here. And then I think I'll probably have enough to maybe try to do a character drawing or a pinup or something of this character. So let's see. A little more side view. I need to answer a few more of these kind of questions from the side. So got a little bit of rib cage. Doing side view now, so I'm thinking that, you know, leg holes are probably a little bit more favoring the front. Just lighten it up a little bit. So we kind of have that chin pad coming down, sort of circular. So the armhole. So we're looking at probably doing a bit of a shoulder pad here. Sort of a chest piece, much like I'm doing up here on the forehead with this sort of shield piece. I'll do something like that that kind of echoes in the design language down here in the chest plate, this sort of big straight bar sort of across here. And figuring that I probably, at rest, the arm is sort of coming down. Again, we're talking, I don't want something highly polished. This is almost crude, like bordering on crude, I think. So it's like the armament isn't necessarily super custom. Or maybe it's the actually opposite. Maybe it's not machine cut. This is hand cut. So this armor was made very custom, actually, kind of a one of a kind, but not custom as in perfect, but custom as in one of a kind, made for this person's body. So probably some forearm cuffs that has to leave room for the joint, right? So there has to be room to be able to move underneath here. Kind of thinking, I like, again, continuing with this sort of design language of this theme of a flat plate. We've got sort of a belt. And sort of looking at how these things are going to work. This, again, this is where a good designer isn't going to stop with aesthetic, right? That's sort of the difference between just creating something that looks cool and something that kind of functions. And a good designer should always consider its function as well. And I think originally I had this sort of idea that there'd be these panels that would sort of cover the ribs, but looking at it now, that doesn't allow for very much flexibility, right? It doesn't allow for very much bending and compression of the rib cage or the torso here. So unless these had a way of expanding and contracting, or they left a lot of room. So I kind of think that as a design, that's going to have to probably change, or I'm going to have to address that. Maybe these kind of curl in some sort of way, but simply as flat panels, I don't think that that's really going to work. So this alternating sort of vertical, horizontal, and then turning up and down, I don't know that that's going to work. So I sort of had this chest piece, which I've kind of loosely blocked in here, but then, you know, as this torso bends, and maybe I can sort of do something to reflect that as well. So if we're bending our spine like this, there's going to be this sort of compression here, right? So let's put the shoulder there. Let's block this in. Let me knock it back a little bit. Just wanted to get the position. Sharpen up a bit. You guys are pretty silent out there tonight. Well, you're welcome nonetheless. Thanks for coming by. So if we're sort of looking at a rib cage here, chest plate, and we'll say that maybe the arm is sort of holding their belly. That would be a natural thing to do for someone compressing, I guess. So we have sort of arm shielding, and then maybe this. Okay. The belt. Narrow enough that it can bend. So in order to deal with something on the abs, it kind of seems like we're going to have to do, maybe we could just rotate them. That seems kind of obvious. Maybe we could do 2 sets, sort of ribs, abdominal shielding. That way, if there is a bend, we could be looking at the shielding being able to kind of be slightly independent, and they can compress that way. Now we have 4 sets of muscles, abdominals actually. The proverbial 6-pack is the upper 3, but then we have the lower abdominals here. But in our case, of our guy, you know, we're talking about there being a belt line here. So the lower abdominals will be definitely underneath the belt. And what are we doing over here? Oh, we're talking about some sort of padded crotch pad. Some sort of shielded undies. Or maybe not. Maybe we leave that as cloth. I didn't want to cover them completely head to toe, so maybe in some ways this area could be softer material, or maybe there could be a cod piece that would sort of block the essentials. You got to have your cod piece. And then we could be looking at the so it's almost like, you know, these pieces are being attached as needed rather than being sort of a head to toe suit. Okay, so back over to side view here. By the way, designing isn't always sexy. It is sexy to design, but sometimes if you're just a spectator, design is something that comes through reiteration. And it's not always like the most glorious thing to watch design happen. It takes a lot of revision, but you gotta love the process. You gotta like this process. I teach a lot of up and coming designers at the college level, and a lot of times people come to school with this idea of what they think being a visual designer is, and it takes a lot of revision, a lot of work to really find good solutions, right? And you got to love this process, and it can be torturous. It's like, oh, still not there yet, still not there yet. So 2 pads, 3 pads, I don't know, I guess it depends on how much bending this person would need to do, but maybe 2's enough. It could be 2 kind of slightly bigger pads. Kind of thinking maybe, or maybe I could make them narrow and they could be 3, but. And then, of course, other things that start to happen are like the back of the design. What's going on in the background, right? What is behind this person? What are they completely covered on the front and no shielding on the back? So how does that work? I didn't really want to spend the entire just streaming, which is just enjoyable and fun, doing all the way around the design, but I did need to work out a few of these things. But I'll do a loose idea of what I think the back might be. So I'm guessing the arms would kind of cover the ribs. You know, if they raise their arm, they might be a little bit screwed, but there could be like maybe some sort of vest, maybe more wrap, right? Some sort of vest here that they're wearing, leathery material underneath, and that the shielding is sort of on top. So then the back might mean like if they were, maybe they would have some sort of shielded pad there. Let's look at a back design. So if this is sort of looking at chest pad on the front, shoulder pads here on the sides, so then back, kind of narrow this belt a little bit. So what would back be? So you have your traps. So we're probably want something that kind of comes up over the neck. But again, kind of continuing with the design motif of these sort of plates. Fortunately, we don't have much compression on the back, so as long as things are kind of loose, we can probably afford to do something here's sort of the back of our little more spacing here, a little more gaps sort of left for moving. So figuring these kinds of deals would be sort of your legs, right? And they're probably wrapping around to the thigh. And there's probably a back piece. So maybe they're connected by some little belt here. But again, these are your hamstrings here. Probably come down a little bit. Or maybe they kind of, yeah, tuck under the cheek there a little bit. So if you... It reminds me of the stormtroopers, like when they sit and move around, they always get into these weird positions where they're suddenly their armor doesn't allow them the right kind of movement. So I think this person would probably try to be more comfortable as long as they're covering the essentials. So I don't know. I don't know how high up I would bring that for the back of the leg. It's like watching the Tin Man walk. It's like, at what point can you really be a soldier when you're running around in a... Okay. Now in this design, this person, isn't covering a lot of their legs. So I was thinking that this is more closer to the vitals. So again, and not a perfect uniform. Again, we're not talking about something standard issue. We're talking about something that they kind of makeshifted, right? So they may not even have anything covering the back. To be honest with you, somebody that is facing somebody to fight or bracing themselves isn't really planning on sneak attacks from the back, right? So I don't know. This is not standard issue stuff. This is a custom piece. Makeshift is more what I was thinking. So these might have been pieces from something else that they've attached to their body. So how perfect this needs to be, completely covering all of them, I think only lends to the idea that they've come from something that's more developed, and this is not that developed. Maybe the headpiece came from something, because this is kind of a custom cut piece, but a lot of this might be found stuff. So, maybe underneath the belt. Oh, that might be an interesting idea. Maybe we could do this, like attached to the belt. Maybe like the shoulders, there could be these sort of, they almost resemble pockets or something, but they're like pads that kind of sit on top of the cheeks there that hang off the belt, is sort of a little bit of padding there. Just like the cod piece in the front, maybe these kind of do something like this off the back. Maybe even these, maybe all this stuff kind of hangs. Straps on around the side, some straps. I think of a lot of the samurai, actually. Feudal Japan, there was some metallurgy there, but a lot of it was just layers and layers of leather and natural materials that they wrapped in, and then they would sort of had pads stuck on, which I guess also allows for a lot more custom fit. So maybe they're kind of suspending here in pieces. Maybe even these have cloth between them. Maybe it kind of attaches here, the bottom of this chest plate, like playing the xylophone. And then the belt. And then again, yeah, these kind of clip on here at the shoulder. It's a lot more makeshift, but I like this. I kind of like the way this is shaping up here. Let's do that kind of. And then maybe off the back there's a little. And then the legs, you got to figure that unless these pads are attached to something, they can't just float, right? So maybe it attaches here to the clothing that's being worn inside. Maybe it's even sort of underneath. It could be attached higher up. It's almost like a garter belt. Hey, garter belt. The base design for early armament. What kind of armament? So yeah, maybe it kind of attaches because this stuff would all have to be mounted to something. Maybe attached at the side here. Clipped on, attached on the side, probably wrapping underneath. Attaching under the arm. Maybe even attaching to the one on the back, if this is the back piece. Maybe same thing. It could attach here at the shoulder, over the top. This would have to attach to something to keep it up. Maybe the sides. If the pad on the back so this is sort of the front leg, and then this would be maybe the back leg. They would attach here on the side, creating this kind of digging it though. I'm really kind of liking the way this sort of primitive makeshift armor is working. And again, there's a little bit of a design language, a little bit of a theme running through here. All right, so we've kind of discussed side views. A little bit of our codpiece. Actually, looks like he's looking at his codpiece. And then, of course, the legs, at least for this guy, I would, you would probably put some sort of shin guards too, but I'm assuming he's a little less concerned about shins. And this is big stuff. Maybe being shot at, maybe being charged by something. He needs to be light on his feet. He has to be able to run. So I think too much dangling stuff low for on this design at least. We'll go with something. Just keep it more simpler. So we're talking about, a wrap. So sort of the knee, gastrocnemius here, and from this point down, it'd just be like wrapping. All right. We are coming along. This is looking pretty good. How you guys coming along? You getting your stuff done? Or are you chilling? You drawing along with? All right. Where do we go from here? I think this cheek is still giving me a little bit of... So before I do maybe my next thing, I still want to work out this cheek a little bit. So maybe this cheek kind of follows the anatomy. It's kind of flat here, right? This cheek pad. And we know that the curvature of the zygomatic, so your zygomatic is sort of up here, right? So this is sort of following the curvature. Zygomatic is probably like right underneath here. And this is sort of front of the cheekbone underneath here. And this doesn't have to be a smooth connection, by the way. This could be like a flap. I'm almost thinking like this could have some space behind it. So like this actually kind of almost like a shield, like a side plate. So it doesn't have to connect perfectly. That's definitely would be some sort of weld in there that would have to negotiate that. But we don't necessarily have to explain all that or show that, but we have to give it imply how it might work. So here's the shield plate, and then of course the nose sort of comes down and protects, and maybe a classic kind of armor. So there's the other side. And then yeah, maybe like somewhere in here there's the shield, which would probably also be coming down at a certain angle. It probably wouldn't be straight up and down, but this would probably wrap underneath here, and then this plate would be at a different angle. And of course, here's the inside. There's the cover. So it's a bit robotic looking in there. Definitely kind of crude. But I'm hoping that kind of crude quality, and then maybe this helmet, the helmet kind of follows the two kind of curve together. And then of course, once we sort of hit this piece, then this is kind of coming down from the jawline. So there would definitely be some sort of weld that would have to happen right there. So there's definitely some space there. But this could be gradually curving a little bit. But I think by the time it sort of hits here, these are two different planes. This is a plane, and then this is a plane. This is straight across, and this is sort of heading back. So this curves a little bit, which means this is really kind of, maybe it continues straight, and somewhere in here there's going to be that shield is going to have to turn directions. I'm going to check, give me a sec here real quick. Stream health, everybody good? All right. Hey, thanks for following along tonight, or wherever you are. All right. Okay. So let's try a little attitude now. There's a lot of different kinds of drawings you can do for design. I like to keep moving around because sometimes when you do different kinds of things, it brings out different solutions and maybe other things you didn't think about. And sometimes addressing something different, you work your way back to something you were doing before. So again, just laying these out over here off to the side. And I think I'm getting ready to do some sort of finished drawing here, or at least preliminary pinup sketch or something. I don't know, whatever the heck you want to call it, but I do a few more. Okay, so most kind of portraits featuring a vertical creature, character, person, you're working with portrait format means a vertical format. And so I'm just kind of playing around a little bit with composition and thinking about movements, gestures. Now, this guy's in this particular pose that we were working with last time. The intention was to kind of show the design without too much gesture to it or attitude, because you just need to see it. So in this case, I want to give it a little bit more attitude, character, something that tells you a little bit more of a story and brings out the personality. He's pretty menacing looking here. And what this, and again, I didn't really put much into this before this, so this is sort of idea generating as you work, which is a fun way to work. I mean, sometimes you have an idea very clearly in the beginning, and other times you're working and developing ideas as you draw. I always tell my students that get drawing because things will come up. You will inspire yourself and get ideas as you work, right? So I didn't really have much before this, so but I'm looking at this character and I'm thinking he's prepared for something. What do we know? Okay, what do we know? Well, we know that he's sort of prepared for physical harm, or he wouldn't have armor, right? So prepared for physical harm, because he's shielding himself, right? He's obviously in a place where he's considering that something could hurt him, and he needs to be kind of prepared. But he's not head to toe, so he's not trained per se. He's more of a guy that's learned on the job. So we'll say on the job skills. He's probably had kind of a rough life. We'll say rough, do it yourself. He's intelligent. You know, he's not a beefcake, but, you know, he's, we'll say athletic. And what else could we say about him? Does he have any special tools? So here we were talking about some sort of kind of a staff. I wasn't looking for so much a gun per se, like a rifle, more like a staff that was used for poking. And we talked last time about this maybe being like a shepherd, a herd, a guy who herds animals, or, you know, leads animals to water or travels with animals. So he has to kind of poke them a lot. Maybe the animal's even kind of dangerous, which is why he needs this stick or this staff. So, but it's not like he's a sharpshooter. So we're not going for riflemen here. It's more like staff. But it looks a little bit like a rifle, for one, because we weren't exactly certain, but two, you might still need to kind of hold it somewhat like you might a rifle, with a butt that braces itself. Maybe he's got some sort of scope so he can see long distances, but I don't know. Maybe this would be better as a scope. He'd have some other kind of tool that he would carry that could help him with scoping things out. So maybe this is more about, this has a certain kind of function to it. These are not normal things you would see, and it kind of separates it from being a gun. So I just wasn't interested in doing another gun. I kind of like designing tools that have more function than just another gun. So anyway, so I'm thinking he's athletic. He carries some sort of staff, which helps him in his work. By the way, I'm just kind of jotting some things down here. So let's say he kind of herds. He's a herdsman. He herds creatures and moves them for sale, raises them, and then, you know, sells them in the marketplace in what is otherwise a pretty tough environment, right? So again, more research about herding might tell you a little bit more about what kind of tools they need, but we're also talking about the kind of creature. But I'm not picturing this as being a guy who herds little creatures. This is a guy that's herding bigger creatures. I'm almost thinking like the equivalent of like a camel, or some sort of desert creature, desert alien creature, right? But the thing must be tough. Maybe it has antlers or it has horns or something, and so he has to kind of use this to poke it, and maybe he can lock these things around its antlers and kind of pin it and hold it. Not exactly sure there. But how could we, you know, depict this guy with a little bit more flair, a little more storytelling? So we'd have to figure out, maybe the next thing is we have to figure out what kind of an animal he herds. But let's say we're going to show him, and maybe it could be a her as well. I mean, that's a possibility here too. I think in this design we're looking at proportions that are slightly more masculine, but, and would it even matter except the size of them? Maybe as long as they're agile. It seems like they have to be agile. So I'm just going to kind of imagine that I'm working from a bigger drawing and I'm doing sort of some preliminary sketches here. Start out with something a little more conventional. Now I have a loose idea what the design of this thing is now, so I can kind of block it in a little bit. That distinct round head is going to be when you do this also, you get a chance to really exercise drawing your person. I want to be close enough in this that I can see some of the details of the costume, so I don't think this would be necessarily a full body pinup. This might be more like head and a torso portrait. So here's that chest plate. With our okay. So there's one idea. It's very hot, so I want to give the feeling that maybe there's hot climate. So I feel like I want to see more of them than just this. This is a little too not enough, and maybe even too close. At least until we do a little bit more designing. So maybe something. Let's try something a little more full body here. Oh, we also kind of talked about the idea that he wears this cloak, which I didn't really go into last time. But there is a little bit of this idea of a cloak. Maybe the cloak can kind of flow around the body there. kind of arms crossed. Kind of heroic pose. Not sure that conveys enough of what he does, though. Almost seems like we have to show the animals in some sort of way. Maybe the animal could be back here somehow. He rides some sort of... Maybe that staff could be on the back. Give me one second. Okay, so I like this. I like the idea that maybe this could convey a kind of sweeping sand. If there's a lot of wind. There's creatures in the back that he rides, sort of silhouette of some sort of creature. We're not real sure. Sun bearing down. I like that. I'm also getting this kind of feeling that maybe we could do something with moving what he rides, his creature that he rides here in the distance, and maybe we can have two views of him a little bit. Like, so here he is on the back of his creature, and then we see him what pose does a does a herder make? Somewhere out there, there's my sheep. So in this case, like, if I can't, block it in, and I want to experiment a little bit more, sort of jump back and forth to anything I may need to work out in the pose in this particular case. So thinking, yeah, let's explore a little bit. Some gestures, right? Ah, I just thought of it. What if he's doing something where he's hurting some sort of animal? So he has to kind of gestural. It'd be sort of like he's sort of bracing. This arm is sort of here holding, and then this arm is sort of holding that staff. Almost looks like a rock star. That's awesome. It's like he's playing bass. Bounce, 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 bounce. Goods and bads, pros and cons. It's a little bit more defensive rather than in control. So I like the idea of this staff. It's kind of funny, but this makes me think of like almost like a spear gun, but not a gun. I mean, it's a spear, but and yes, it shoots something, but it's a little bit different. So maybe this is like a more like a harpoon, but above ground. But it's not. This is a little bit more defensive, so I don't know if I like. This more looks like he's bracing. He's bracing himself for. Let me come back over here for a second. Still pretty conventional. Doesn't say enough. This is. I like the idea that maybe the hands are on the hips, maybe. There's a little bit of this sort of restlessness. I mean, is a herdsman ever. Seems like they'd always be on the watchful eye, right? They'd always be sort of looking out for where somebody's going astray. But I like the idea that this cloak kind of drifts across the scene a little bit here. So maybe, you know, maybe if we're hands sort of on the hips here. We could see the staff on the back like this. It's a little bit like maybe the hand, he's standing there watching. He's definitely watching something, and he's maybe kind of frustrated. Put the hands on the hips is a little bit of attitude. But he's watching something, always watching, right? It's a good one to keep over here. So athletic, watching, intelligent, rough, on the job skills. I was thinking, you know, he could have binoculars. Okay. So maybe the arms are kind of holding. So we're getting the feeling that he's watching. He's looking off into the distance. I like the idea of the way the cape is kind of bisecting this picture too, by the way. Compositionally, that's strong. Kind of sweeps us back over here where we see the thing he rides, which that might be something we need to design next. So he's sort of holding these spectacles. So we've done a lot here, and we started out with a little bit of a side view, and we worked out some of the armor, some of the necessities for movement, a little bit about the sort of interesting merger of planes and welds, a little bit of the front and back designs for additional armor and how they're going to actually need to suspend, which answers a lot when you start thinking about how this has to attach itself to the body. It's looking pretty good. Now we're kind of looking at something that would represent this character in a little more of a narrative, thinking about the kind of poses that they might do, and now we're thinking a little bit about accessories. So I'm kind of thinking, obviously, that a herdsman would be watching. So therefore, they would need probably some sort of spyglass binoculars. But, you know, maybe we can do a little bit more with this next time. But I'm liking the way that compositionally that this is coming together. So we have sort of a cloak here. I think the cloak is going to do a lot for the way that this character moves. All right. Well, so New Year's resolution, I'm trying to keep these down a little bit. Some of these streams have gone pretty long, so I think for this time, we've done a lot of good designing. So I think that maybe what we'll do is we'll stop here, and next time maybe we'll do a little bit more with the spyglass, maybe a full drawing that's a little bit more second draft of this, and then we'll be ready for doing something a little more pin-up cover-ish of this character. So anyway, I hope you're having a good one. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. Sometimes this process is a lot of revision, which is why it's fun, and you got to like it. You got to like this investigative quality. I had fun. I hope you had fun doing what you were doing, and I hope you didn't mind hanging out with me. Have yourself a good evening or a good morning or a good day wherever you are. Be good to yourself. Draw as much as you can if you're interested in this kind of stuff. And be kind to each other. Take care, and we'll catch you next time.